Thanks, Nicole. My name is Alison Filler. I'm with Climate Collective, and we are now going to jump into kind of the 101 of carbon credits. And I'm glad to have Sarah Beth, Haley, and Annette here to help us break it down. So jumping right in, and maybe we can go kind of a spitfire here. Sarah Beth, can you walk us through kind of 3 different ways that we can think about carbon credits? What's the difference between the compliance and the voluntary market to start?
I would say just like length of time it's existed, that people understand and know what it is a really good way to start there. Compliance market pieces are your power purchase agreements, pieces of renewable energy credits, things that corporates, when they were trying to scale renewable energy, really were incentivized back in, I guess, early 2000s to start importing this into their portfolios. Voluntary carbon market is also early 2000s, but to a lesser known capacity because the types of projects that were available didn't have the scrutiny and the interest of due diligence that they have today. So compliance market, very much your bread and butter, industry-led energy systems, think grid technology. Voluntary carbon market is like your cousin that crashed the wedding party and is trying to figure out which table they should sit at. And I talk to different audiences in many ways about scaling the voluntary carbon market, but let me give you one number that I have to read off of my iPad because I always get it wrong. But this idea that we know that we have to scale the voluntary carbon market. That's at about $2 billion today, right? When you think about credits that are available between nature-based solutions, engineered carbon dioxide removal, everything from like whale poop all the way up to biochar, which is a heavily industrialized process. Climeworks is the darling of the industry now, but it's a very expensive version of engineered carbon removal. We're trying to get that price point down below, and I'll talk about another asset a little bit later. But in comparison, the compliance marketplace is $270 billion right now. So those are stark differences in numbers. When you think about where Bloomberg is predicting these numbers will scale to, where McKinsey's predicting these numbers will scale to, those are totals into the billions and trillions in the next 10 years. So we know that these markets will converge eventually. They're nowhere near each other now in terms of what we need to get there. You'll hear people talk about, oh, whoa, the supply isn't there, so how can we purchase something if it doesn't exist? Liquidity is important. We can get into this more, but those 2 things, compliance market space is what's in typical portfolios now. NASDAQ's, our internal piece, is about 45% compliance market space. Then 35% nature-based solutions, and I'm sure I'll get hate for this because we're supposed to stand up our Puro asset, which is the only global standard setter that enhances that durability for carbon dioxide removal to a project permanence of 100 years or more. And that makes a difference because nature-based solutions range from 4 years to it doesn't exist, to was it burned down, to what are you really investing in, that ecosystem. And you can see why it's complicated. It's important to have people who ask intelligent questions about the asset that they're purchasing. So I'll end it there. We can go into it more, but I'm sure you both also have thoughts on what it is or what it isn't.
Yeah, I'm the weird cousin because we operate in the voluntary carbon market, so hey, someone has a table, let me know.
But we like you, so you're gonna come through again.
Well, I want to dig a little bit deeper on some of the terms that you pressed on there. So Haley, maybe can you take us through what are avoidance credits and removal credits?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So there's sort of 3 different types of carbon credits, I would say, even beyond that. You have avoidance credits, removal credits, and you also have reduction credits. So each of these represents 1 ton of carbon emissions that is not in the atmosphere. And avoidance credits happen by avoiding doing something that would allow carbon to go into the atmosphere. So I might own a bunch of trees on land and somebody is trying to log them and you come in and you pay me to not log them. That is an avoidance credit. It avoids emissions going into the atmosphere. A reduction credit is when you reduce the amount of, you minimize the impact of the carbon that would go into the atmosphere. A good example here is a renewable energy project. If I could start a coal plant or I could do a solar farm, and I do a solar farm instead of a coal plant because I've gotten revenues from carbon credits, that's a reduction. There's less carbon that goes into the atmosphere. Again, 1 ton. And then the removal credits, which Sarah Beth was talking about a second ago, these are actually pulling carbon out of the atmosphere that's already been released into the atmosphere. So that can be anything from nature-based solutions, like if I plant a tree, it pulls carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, to really heavily engineered options like something called direct air capture, which is basically a giant vacuum cleaner that sucks air in, basically takes the carbon dioxide out of it, and then releases it back into the atmosphere. So those are sort of three different categorizations. You'll hear a lot of folks have a very strong opinion about removal credits are the only ones you should buy, or avoidance credit or nature-based avoidance credits are the only ones you should buy. And the answer there is that everybody's right. We need all climate solutions that are out there. The avoidance ones make a lot of sense because there's a mitigation hierarchy that says first do no harm and then correct the harm that you've done. So that's something that's like very, very compelling. And at the same time, we know we're overshooting the carbon budget and we have to get carbon out of the atmosphere. So we need both and. There's kind of no wrong answers, which is the good news.
Thanks, Haley. Now, Annette, why do people buy carbon credits? What are they good for?
To be honest, I think that we already covered this part pretty good in the previous panels, but we as a company, just giving the background, we are planting trees in Africa, so restoring degraded lands, and our customers, first of all, they have gone through their decarbonization journey. They know their carbon footprint, and there is so much that you can do, so you need to offset what is left. So that's the first reason. Second reason, of course, all the CSR activities, their consumers are asking for what are their activities, what kind of projects they are promoting, and that's another one. And of course, environmental action as well.
And you have experience with nature-based projects, right? Can you tell us a little bit about your experience on the ground and why is it a little more complicated than just planting a tree?
So, disclaimer at first, I totally agree. We need all kinds of solutions because we don't have time. We need to act now. But I love to say that I'm boots on the ground in Africa, and it's so much complex things going on regarding the project development, and it's not so easy than just planting a tree. It actually starts in a tree seedling nursery, so we need to build the capacity, we need to build the awareness. We also need to look and analyze what kind of land it is, all the land user rights, so much reports that we need to do because we need to build trust in the market. There is so much things going on regarding the greenwashing, and I truly believe that all the open source methods can also help us as a company, boots on the ground, to build and bridge this gap with the buyers. Because there are so many things that we can do, good things together with local communities. We love actually the bottom-up approach. We are building our projects together with local communities. And this is the great way because we are not giving a fish, we are not doing the foundational work only, we are teaching them how to fish and we are building these projects together with them. So that's actually about impact in the end of the day.
And with all these different types of credits and types of projects, how do we think about quality? Haley, what does that look like?
I'm ready for this one. Okay, so this is really hard because a lot of people will say, I have a strong preference, like I said, for a certain type of credit, or my operations are in Uganda, so I want to buy credits in Uganda. However, there's an organization that has really helped us out on this front called the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market, ICVCM. And they have essentially issued a floor for what should be a minimum quality for a carbon credit and what to look for. And they have 10 things on this list, but really the first 4 are the ones to pay attention to. And they are additionality, permanence, robust quantification, could be a little catchier, and no double accounting. And so what those 4 things are is the additionality piece means that this project wouldn't have happened if there weren't revenues from carbon credits coming into that project. The carbon credit was an important incentive to make sure that this project goes forward. It's additional to the action that would have happened if there weren't any carbon credits involved. Permanence is, Sarah Beth mentioned this a bit earlier, permanence is how long the project is going to keep that carbon out of the atmosphere. In general, nature-based projects keep carbon out of the atmosphere for a shorter time than if you do something like pull CO2 out of the atmosphere through direct air capture and inject it into concrete and then build a building with it, for instance. So there's 30 years, there's 100 years, there's 1,000 years. There's maybe an argument, again, that everything is good because 1 ton of carbon right now is the best thing we can do, right? The robust quantification is about the data that underlies the carbon credit and making sure that that data is collected that makes it clear what's happening on the ground, and how that happened, and that the measurement is very conservative, so that we're not giving too many carbon credits for a project that's actually not sequestering that amount of carbon. And then the last one is around, what is the last one? I had these all down. No double counting. Thank you. And this one's just very simple. It's that the carbon credit can't be sold to two different people at the same time. So those are the first four. There's four more that are about the standard that the carbon credit comes from. And these are basically to make sure that they're transparent with their data, that they're recording things in a registry, et cetera. And then the final two are making sure that the carbon credit doesn't cause harm to a community. And the final one is that it is in service of the net zero transition overall. So that seems like a lot of things, but there's actually a framework to go through and kind of step-by-step check. And the ICVCM will be accrediting standards and saying this standard is issuing credits that are core carbon principle compliant, and you can feel pretty confident that those are going to be high quality carbon credits, or at least past that minimum bar.
I just wanted to give a quick add to this one. It was great, Haley. But also regarding how do we account for social co-benefits? That's actually also as well the high quality what we can bring. And how do we account for that? And what's the mechanism how we actually give those kind of data? How do we collect them? And how do we transit this one to the, for example, companies? Like how much actually each carbon credit which they bought created impact in the region, because truly I believe it can bring the bioeconomy. For example, for us planting trees and bamboos, it creates a bioeconomy. So how do we account for that?
Excellent. And Haley, you mentioned standards before. Can you walk us through what's the difference between a standard and a registry? And where do rating agencies come into that as well?
Yeah, so usually people say standard and registry and they mean the same thing. The registry is a mechanism for keeping account of all the carbon credits. A standard is the methodology, or the standard setter sets the methodologies for which a carbon credit can be issued. You can think about the standards as like different brands of ice cream, let's say. This is a bit of a tortured metaphor, but bear with me. So you have like Haagen-Dazs and you have Ben & Jerry's, and the methodologies are different flavors of ice cream. So both Haagen-Dazs and Ben & Jerry's have chocolate ice cream. Likewise, both Vera and Gold Standard have avoided forestry, AFALU credits. They're land use based credits. So they both have similar methodologies across that one. But you also asked about ratings agencies. Ratings agencies, let's say, are like the food critics that come in and they give you an assessment and they say, actually Haagen-Dazs ice cream is terrible and Ben & Jerry's is where it's at, and it's because Haagen-Dazs has rats in their ice cream or something. I have no idea. This is getting a little too far away. But basically the ratings agencies are designed to give some external assurance around how high quality the particular project and the carbon credit that comes from that project are. So the registries are the ones that issue the credits. They're the ones that cause the credits to exist. They're the verifiers that make sure that the facts on the ground are really the facts on the ground. And then the rating agencies are an additional data source to give an indicator of quality.
No rats in the ice cream, please. And to wrap us up here, Sarah Beth, you mentioned removals earlier. Can you walk us through what's the urgency of scaling removals?
To give you an idea, a lot of people know the term science-based target. That accounts for primarily reduction-based work, so you're reducing your emissions across the portfolio. A part of that science-based target standard right now is 10% you're allowed to use for residuals, which is CDR, which is carbon dioxide removal. That's not enough to get to where we need to be. I think that when you duke it out behind closed doors, and most of the time why we're arguing here. Earlier today, there was a 2-hour session where all the standard setters were meeting, Vera, Gold Standard, VCMI. It's not a problem that has been easily solved. But right now, you have corporates who are trying to signpost on a roadmap. They know what science-based targets are, but if they're told that only 10% of their product is allowed to be residual emissions that are reduced over time through CDR, that's not going to help us to reach that reduction potential by 2030. And the rapid downscale that we need is of the trillion magnitude for reduced tonnage. We know that. That's why we're having this conversation. And from NASDAQ's perspective, one of the reasons why we believe in long-term project permanence and why we believe in engineered CDRs at this point is because when you think about the scientific method, it's something that you can test, iterate, try again, revamp it. Harder to do that with ecological systems to predict it on a long scale time horizon. So for me, I am very excited with everything that's coming through for the IRA from the DOE, really operationalizing and incentivizing subsidies that go into direct air capture and other types of enhanced and engineered CDR. It doesn't mean that nature-based solutions aren't a huge part of the problem, probably the solution, but we all have problems with how we can test to make sure that that type of CDR is functionable, reportable, verifiable. You'll hear a term thrown around called MRV, reporting, monitoring, reporting, and verification. Those things just mean, are you doing the thing that you say that you're doing within a time threshold that is meaningful, and can you write down on a piece of paper that's trackable? The CDR moment is exciting because there's a lot of money flowing into it. Everyone that can make a SaaS solution or a small startup company is going to really benefit over time just from this moment to make a ton of money, but there's a larger opportunity, and that's saving humanity, species, ecosystem. Why we're all here is because I think we believe in that tremendously. NASDAQ's, again, specific methodology is photo.earth, but it's not the only one that exists out there, and we're looking and hoping that there are many other competitors that decide that that project permanence is of a high standard, and that's where we're all evolving towards, which is fantastic because it wasn't like that last year.
No, it's an exciting time in the market. Thank you all for breaking down carbon credits 101 for us.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you to this wonderful group of women for talking all things carbon credits for us. Next, I'd like to bring James Mister to the stage to talk about how to buy carbon.